Welcome to PuppySMART Orientation. This video is really takes place of an in-person class. So traditionally, we have owners without puppies come into class and we go over a bunch of stuff. I decided to do this video so that we don't have to do an in-person class and you can kind of take everything in at your own pace. I don't know if you've never been to a puppy class. Trust me when I say that so much is happening that it would be impossible for you to take in all of this information that I think is important. It'd be impossible for me to even cover it in that environment. So I do appreciate you taking a look at everything here, and you should know that I specifically designed this orientation to be very heavy on the education side about how your puppy's brain is working. One of my goals with the program is to really help people kind of level up their knowledge on dogs' brains, dogs' behavior, so that they can, use that information in real life, right? Because you don't always have a trainer standing next to you telling you what's going on. So I really, really appreciate y'all being here. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's talk about your puppies and your emotional systems. So the goal of PuppySMART is to take advantage of your puppy's key developmental stages when their little brains are the most open to accepting new things and they're at their most emotionally flexible and resilient. Dogs are mammals and they have the same hardwired emotional systems in the brain as we do. Now, this isn't going to be a long lecture in neuroscience, so bear with me. But like I've said, I really found that people appreciate having a high-level understanding of this information just because it gives context of what we're trying to do in this developmental stage with our puppies, and it also allows you to problem solve on the fly. But puppies have negative and positive emotional systems just like we do, and they experience those types of emotions. But the big difference between our brains is that puppies do not have, or dogs in general, don't have the same ability to reason as we do. That part of their brain, that rational part of their brain, is much, much smaller. So you can think of that as sort of a filter of rationality. They don't really have that like we have. But current research puts a dog's intelligence on par with about a 2-year-old human. So that gives us, a lot of us intuitively sort of know, or we've been there with 2-year-olds, what we can sort of expect from a puppy or a dog in general. So let's talk about the positive emotional systems first. Seeking, now, too, I should note, all of this information is from Jaak Panksepp. He is an effective neuroscientist. He coined all these terms. He's kind of the standard of what we use when we talk about emotional systems. And when he named his systems, we use all capital letters, and then the word after that's like here it says seeking and expectations. The expectations is an adjective that he applied to his systems, just so you can have a general understanding of what they mean, although they are pretty straightforward, except for this one. This one isn't as straightforward. So the seeking system, this is all about expectations. And it's a really important one from our perspective when we're working with our puppies because it's connected to the reward system of the brain, which pumps out the dopamine. For us, our seeking system might be activated when we're enjoying, say, putting together a puzzle, or we're planning a vacation that we're really excited about, or we're sitting down at a restaurant we've been dying to try, right? It's all about, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. For a dog, it might be activated when they're sniffing around in the grass reading P-mail, or foraging through the bathroom trash, or searching for treats in a snuffle mat like this little puppy is. And novelty activates the seeking system. Right? So this system is what drives dogs to investigate novelty. And, they evolved as scavengers mostly, right? So they're hardwired to seek out novelty. I mean, that's how they find food and places to rest and things like that. Our dogs don't have to do a lot of that work, but, I was talking about sort of how they evolved. So the seeking system is going to be really important for us going forward. But all you have to know is that it's connected to the reward system of the brain. So another positive emotional system is lust. That one's pretty straightforward. We also have care, which is really about nurturing. Pretty straightforward. And then we have play. And play, Panksepp called it social joy, right? And we all know what play looks like. Play is a very fragile system in both humans and animals. It doesn't activate if a negative system is dominating it. So we'll talk about that in a second here when we get to the negative emotional systems. Let's see. Let's talk about the negatives. So we'll talk about the fear system. This is really all about anxiety. And I realize if you do work in behavioral health or mental health, we do differentiate between fear and anxiety, technically speaking, but for our purposes and for the purposes of emotional systems, we're glomming them together. So fear, the fear system. Most of us intuitively understand what that is, that sort of fight or flight. There's also lots of things in between fight or flight, but fidget, freeze, fiddle, those are also other behaviors that are activated by the fear system. But for our purposes, one that we really talk about a lot with puppies and dogs is resource guarding or food guarding. When a dog growls, if someone tries to take something from it or a toy or food or whatever. We believe at this point today, we believe that that resource guarding lives here in the fear system. And the reason that's important is because that guides us a little bit on how we should be handling that behavior problem. But we'll get to that much later. We'll be talking about resource guarding in class, actually. We've got the panic system. This is about sadness. I guess the best example that I've heard about this system is if you watch like a group of young animals. I saw this video where these puppies were playing, and then one puppy got real interested in something and was kind of distracted, and then all the puppies and mom all wandered off, and then the distracted puppy, once he realized that, oh my gosh, where is everybody, he sort of went into this little panic fit, right? So that's the panic system. And then we have the rage system, which we are most of us pretty familiar with. And frustration lives in the rage system. So I say that because a lot of us have experienced dogs that with reactivity, part of why we're all here is that we want to prevent certain behaviors in our dogs. And reactivity is a big one. And reactivity really comes out of frustration. So I wanted to take the time to point that out there. But the goal of early puppyhood socialization is to help puppies develop the emotional flexibility, right? And not always default to a negative emotional system in the face of something unexpected or different. Something that I do want to point out, just because it comes up a lot with clients, this idea of social dominance. Panksepp concluded that he found insufficient evidence to include social dominance as a primary emotion. He considered it more of an acquired behavior. And the reason that I do bring this up is because old school dog training relied heavily on this notion that unless we show our dominance, like, be the alpha, our dog isn't going to respect us, or they're going to try to, take over our lives, I guess. I never really understood that. But we now know that the study that sort of prompted this whole idea of social dominance in dogs, at least, the study was very, very flawed, and it was built around a wolf pack, but it was a pack of wolves in captivity. And it turns out wolves in captivity behave differently than wolves in the wild. And so it was a flawed study. And we know now that our domestic dogs don't structure their lives in these really extreme hierarchies. So that whole alpha notion about their entire lives does not apply. I do want to point out, though, that when we do use the word dominance, when it comes to dogs, most of the time we are talking about resources. So a dog that is dominant over a resource. That's kind of how we talk about it, but we don't need to get too much into that right now. But if you are interested in this idea of social dominance, I do have a paper that the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior put out on their positions of the use of dominance theory in behavior. We just don't like to use it in training, but I do have to have this conversation with a lot of clients who do approach teaching their puppies with this theory in mind, and there's just way too much risk for behavioral fallout, like reactivity and aggression. It's not always very effective as sort of a training tool. But anyway, so I did want to address that idea of social dominance. Like I said, it's still kind of discussed today with dog trainers and clients. And so I did want to point that out. All right, so moving on. Let's talk briefly about how our little favorite furry family member came to be. So is our puppy just a nicer wolf? Well, not really. So the current theory of domestication is that dogs evolved from a now extinct species of gray wolf about 30,000 years ago. And we actually, according to today's research, evolved together, which is very, very interesting because a lot of research that shows we have very unique relationship with our dogs. It's unlike any other in the animal kingdom, really. There's a physiological component to it. There's a behavioral component to it. So it's very, very interesting. And so we've got a lot of data to support that. So let's talk about selective breeding. Dogs are, as a species, they have more variability within their species than any other mammal. So it's remarkable, right? We all know it. Chihuahua up to a Great Dane, and everything in between all come from the domestic dog. I do love to use DNA tests. And I'm just putting it here because I think they're kind of fun. And for, it gives you your dog's lineage and all that, but it also does give breed related health traits and health traits in general. So they're good. They're great for purebred dogs. They're also really useful for mixed breed. I have a mutt, and I learned lots of things about my little mutt, including a genetic marker that he had for a disc problem in his back. So it's a good thing. Now I know I need to keep his weight reasonable so that he doesn't hurt his little spine. So anyway, I just really like the dog DNA tests. I think they're really, really fun. So let's talk about your puppies and getting to know what sort of dog you might have. The American Kennel Club puts groups dogs into categories, which just makes it a lot easier for us to talk about. So we'll quickly go through those. So we've got our sporting group. These guys were bred to assist hunters in the capture and retrieval of feathered game. These are your retrievers and your spaniels. A lot of times these dogs can be easily distracted by birds and water. And so they do require a lot of distraction training to be able to be well trained in those environments. So we've got the hound group. These guys were bred to pursue warm-blooded prey. Those are our dachshunds and our beagles. These guys can be interesting to train if you're doing like formal obedience work or not even formal, if you just want to go for a walk. It can be hard to train these guys to heel, that classic heel where they're walking nicely next to you and they're looking ahead because, if you've ever tried to walk a beagle, they always want to have their nose to the ground. So extra training needs to go into teaching them to do other things. Then we've got our working group. These guys were developed to assist us in some capacity, right? Pulling carts, guarding flocks and people, protecting families. These are our boxers, our huskies. It's actually a very wide, kind of a diverse group. You see mastiffs in there. like a breed that's becoming very popular right now, Cane Corso. Love them. It's an Italian Mastiff. Love them as a breed. But a lot of them are moving into the suburbs, and a common behavior complaint that I hear is that they react to visitors. And so, which makes sense as a guard dog. So a lot of training is needed for these guys, in order to help them learn that, not everybody, we don't need to be concerned all the time about everything. Then we've got our terriers. These are the feisty guys, bred to go underground in pursuit of vermin. And then the longer leg versions, your pit bulls, were bred for all kinds of yucky things. But terriers are, like I said, feisty. Common complaint with terriers, especially the smaller types that do a lot of hunting, would be resource guarding. Right. So we bred them to go out and hunt vermin. If you've ever tried to get a dead animal from a terrier, can be really difficult. So we have to keep that in mind when we're training the dog and what our expectations are too. Then we have our toys. These are our tiny little companion dogs. They were bred for alertness and cuteness and companionship. These are the Chihuahuas and the Pugs. A lot of times that alertness factor can play a big role. The big complaints that dog trainers get are, Chihuahua can be overly alert, but bark, bark, bark at everything. They're actually really great watchdogs. Sometimes we have to work on ways to manage that behavior trait effectively. Then we have our herders. So these guys were bred for moving livestock and largely to work very closely with humans. So you get very trainable dogs. And these are your German Shepherds, your Border Collies, your cattle dogs, things like that. This group, stimulated by movement, right? We bred them to do things around a lot of movement. And so what we find with our pet dogs is that sometimes they can get overstimulated by movement. So if you've got, young children and you have a Border Collie, all that running around and everything can inspire a herder to actually want to herd. Some herding dogs, American cattle dogs, I'll say, we bred them to use their mouths on giant animals weighing thousands of pounds. And so mouthiness can be a common complaint for people who are owning herding dogs. And then finally, we have our non-sporting group. These guys don't fit anywhere, and there's no commonalities really between them, but they're all interesting. And these were our French bulldogs our bulldogs, poodles. So they're all very, very different, and there's really no commonality between them. But knowing about your breed type or your mix of breed types is going to help you understand what behaviors may be breed related, right? And so a lot of times breed-related behaviors can become really, really annoying unless we're training for that, right? And so when we're talking about activity, you'll hear me talk about breed-appropriate activities because not all dogs like to do all the same things. So we'll talk about that. So get to know your puppy's breed, and it'll be fun to see them all. All right, so let's talk about SMART. SMART is just an acronym: Structure, Management, Activity, Red Flags, and Training. And it's a framework that you can use as a guide for the rest of your dog's life. This framework is oriented mostly for puppies, but there's a ton of overlap when it comes to adult dogs. And if you're interested in the SMART framework for adult dogs, just visit my website. But these are the areas in a dog's life that we must pay attention to in order to provide a happy, healthy life for our dog. When behavior problems arise, we have to make sure that we're tending to all of these areas. It's all connected, just like in human beings. So we will talk about each of these sections. So S stands for structure. We just mean to create a healthy environment where our puppy can thrive physically and emotionally, right? So here's where we are establishing, helping the dog establish feelings of safety and trust. We're providing veterinary care. We're allowing the dog to get sufficient sleep. We're doing gentle grooming. Here's where we think about nutrition. So these are all of the things that we need to think about when we're kind of trying to create a healthy environment. Management is all about, especially for puppies, all about routines and preventing the opportunity for puppy to make mistakes. So this is where we'll be talking about typical puppy problems like housebreaking and jumping and inappropriate biting and all of that. In management, we really focus on the idea of consistency in helping to teach puppies because they need that, not unlike humans. And also in the management segment or section is where we'll be talking about safety with children. Activity and enrichment is also a word that I throw in under activity. This is probably the most, well, it's a super hot topic in my field, and we've focused more on it in the last few years than I would say in any area of dog behavior. So here we're essentially providing age and breed appropriate activities for our dog. And we're also, for puppies, providing safe exposure to the sights and the sounds and the sensations of our world. So physical exercise is important. And in your binder, and did I mention all of this is going to be in a binder? When you get to your first class, you'll receive a binder that is set up, and these are the tabs, SMART, and then everything that and more probably than we cover in class is going to be in each section of the binder. But you'll get guidelines on appropriate physical exercise, for example, for a young puppy. They're very, very different than even for a 6-month-old dog. So all that information will be in there. Most importantly, I point out, is mental enrichment. Here's where a lot of us fall short with our pet dogs. And so we're going to be working a lot on that. Here's where, dogs have social interactions, play, that's all an activity. And then for us, we are exposing our puppies safely to the sights, sounds, sensations, all the stuff in our world. And that's to kind of expose them to novelty and, work on those emotional systems like we talked about earlier. Red flags. With puppies, hopefully, we are focused primarily with preventing red flag behaviors. These are the behavior problems associated with lack of socialization and fear, anxiety, and reactivity and aggression. So most commonly, we're dealing with possession aggression, which we talked about before, that resource guarding. Separation anxiety, huge. In my world, unfortunately, very complex behavior problem. And so we really focus on doing like independence training and things with our puppies. Leash reactivity, we focus on preventing that. And then we are also addressing, if our puppies are showing fear of novel things, we work on training, teaching them that they don't have to be fearful. And that takes us to the next section, training. Puppies are always learning. What they're learning is, sometimes up to us. Sometimes it's just happening. Well, a lot of times it's just happening in their environment. Training is something you'll work on for a couple years with your dog, because like humans, they can't learn everything in preschool that they need to get through life, right? Their brains aren't equipped to handle everything they need to know. So you'll be working on training, as your puppies are becoming adult dogs. Here's also where we start in PuppySMART class. We start the foundations for the important life skills, like being alone. We start teaching the foundations for good manners, things like that. And here's where we also learn techniques on how to counter condition or change feelings for a puppy who might be concerned about things. So those exercises are going to be something we'll be working on in class. They'll be in your binder. And a note to mention about training, I always like to kind of bring up this sort of human entitlement approach to behavior, because it is a very common sentiment, right? That a dog should do something because I said so. All I'll say is, behavior doesn't flow like a fountain, right? Behavior is the tool that animals, including us, use to manipulate the environment to get the consequences that enable us, or puppies, or dogs, to make a living in the world. So using positive reinforcement training is our best chance at teaching dogs the behaviors that they need to help them make a living. And also helping them become dogs that are enjoyable to live with, which ultimately is kind of really what we care about. So like I said, when you come to class, you'll get a binder broken out in these categories, step-by-step instructions for you to be working on at home and all that kind of thing. So why the big focus on 9 to 14 weeks of age? This is the period when what's called the critical or sensitive socialization period that ends between 12 to 14 weeks of age. Now, it actually starts while your puppy's still with the breeder at about 6 weeks of age. So the breeder should be doing things on their end. But the goal of PuppySMART is to really take advantage of this sensitive period. So this is when puppies naturally assume that something new, like people or animals or sounds or new experiences like being handled, is safe and might even be rewarding. And it's also very important to note that the human socialization period ends at 12 weeks. This just means that by 12 weeks, your puppy has formed an emotional response to meeting new people. We used to tell puppy owners to have puppy meet like 100 new people between 8 and 12 weeks of age. That's still a fine goal, but how we do that today is very different than the way that we used to advise people to do it. So the old school approach was we would ask people to approach puppy and maybe even hand them a treat. The person would probably pet the puppy. I mean, who doesn't want to pet a puppy? But if the puppy's leashed or being held, it's really difficult to observe how a puppy feels about that particular encounter. Now, they may take a treat or accept being touched by a person that they're not thrilled about. But if they're having these icky feelings, we're actually tainting that experience. And they're learning that meeting new people can predict like a negative feeling or creepiness. So essentially, we're contributing to a negative emotional response. So that was the old school way. Today, we now know to observe the puppy and let the puppy decide if they are comfortable approaching a new person. If not, we say, oh, well, and we thank the person for their interest, and then we give puppy a treat and move along. What puppy learns in that moment is that new people don't necessarily predict something icky, but rather they predict mom giving me a treat. So if a puppy does decide to approach a person, and we'll get to see a lot of this in class, you're going to want to instruct people to pet puppy low on the chest versus reaching over her head, and maybe give the puppy a high value treat. And reaching on top of a head, rarely will you see a dog not try to duck from that. It's just kind of unpleasant for dogs. And so we really advise that people pet low on the chest, below the puppy's head. And of course, the food that goes with that is really, really good. And there are some really, really important handouts in your binder about proper ways to approach a puppy, what kind of body language we're looking for. But on these positive experiences, in the quote new way of doing it, what puppy has learned and what we've accomplished in that scenario is that we're giving our puppy the sense that they have some agency or control in these situations, which ultimately contributes to their overall feelings of trust and safety, which is the whole goal of what we're trying to accomplish in this age group. So at this age, too, puppies are hardwired to investigate novelty. Sometimes this turns out great for them and sometimes not. For example, a puppy might try to climb an obstacle and then falls down on his back. And at this stage, we expect a puppy to recover pretty quickly in less than 10 seconds. And then we really want to see puppy just kind of move on. That's really where we're building this emotional flexibility and resiliency that we keep talking about. And developing this kind of flexibility is key so that your puppy becomes a dog that can handle the unexpected. Because it's impossible to expose our puppies to every single type of situation or stimuli that they're going to experience in their life. But our goal is really to help our puppies learn naturally that the appearance of something new or different does not by default predict danger, that there's really no need for them to just reactively fly off the handle and activate those negative emotional systems. And at this age, puppies are learning by association or emotional response. Now, there's a handout in the training section of your binder called The 2 Ways Puppies Learn, and you should look at that. But, we learn by association too. So for a simple example, when we meet someone for the first time, we come away with some kind of association, whether it's positive or negative or neutral. So if you really enjoyed that interaction, you'd probably be happy to see that person again. If not, you're probably not going to be happy to see that person again. And that feels, like that little pit of dread in your stomach or, whatever, you're dreading it. So therefore you formed a negative association. So puppies do experience the world this way too, perhaps even more strongly than we humans do, because they lack the filter of rational thought. Right? They are constantly forming emotional associations, whether something's safe or dangerous or neutral, or is it good for me or bad for me, or is it just neutral? And these are the associations that inform the decisions that puppies make and the reactions that they have to various situations and things in their environment. Now, a common example of associative learning in puppies is their reaction to the sight of their food bowl, for example, or their leash. They don't just love dishware or dog accessories in general, but they associate their bowl with eating or their leash with walking. And if they like those things, which hopefully they do, then the sight of those items makes them happy. So this associative learning is why we like to introduce the concept of a marker in training, because it's effortless for puppies to learn. And it's the first thing we teach when we're trying to train new behaviors. So when you hear us talk about markers, we'll be doing that a lot in class. We love introducing them at this age because, like I said, it's effortless for them to learn. So now it's important to note that there are 2 sides to this developmental stage, right? There's that emotional sensitivity that leaves puppies open to accepting new experiences, also in equal measure allows the imprint of fearful experiences. And without that filter of rationality, a fearful experience can cause a puppy to make all the wrong associations. So after 14 weeks and PuppySmart's over for most puppies, you're just going to want to keep at it. That sensitive period has ended, and at this stage, puppy's brain has shifted into being more pessimistic or suspicious about new things, where new things could be triggering a more fearful response in the puppy. But I should say here that it's not always obvious with every puppy. There are many puppies whose genetics and temperament and experiences allow them to just blow by these fear periods, and you may not notice your puppy being particularly fearful about any particular thing. But as far as learning goes, puppies' brains shift into learning by consequence or by doing. And the consequence must be immediate, like within a half second. So for example, we can tell a school-age child that we'll take him out for ice cream to celebrate a good report card. So when he's, having this reward, this ice cream, he understands that he's being rewarded for grades that he got a week ago, and maybe he's worked, for months to get these grades. A dog could never understand this. It's way beyond a dog's ability to connect those types of events. But the way a dog might see something at this stage, and this will affect kind of how you look at training, the way that we do training, which we will be working on in PuppySMART. So say I'm trying to teach a puppy to go to a mat, right? I lure the puppy onto the mat by tapping my hand. Puppy walks onto the mat. Then I spend a few seconds rummaging around for a treat. And by the time I deliver the treat 3 seconds later, the impact of what I was trying to teach the puppy to go to your mat is lost. Right? Because during those 3 seconds, he maybe sat down or sniffed the floor or maybe looked to the left. Then the treat appeared. So as far as the puppy is concerned, he got that treat for looking to the left. So dogs learn by consequence like we do, but for them, the consequence has to be immediate, which is why we use a marker in training, which we're going to cover in a little bit. So because puppies are learning by consequence at this stage, we're able to start more structured training. This idea that the dog does something that gets something is sort of the basis of positive reinforcement training, right? We're focusing on rewarding behaviors that we want to happen again. And now we can start teaching puppies, the basic foundations of what you think of when you think of obedience or manners. Activating Well, one thing I love about this stage and about positive reinforcement training is that even more important than the actual behaviors that they're learning, they're developing a love for learning. And, we're activating that seeking system that we talked about. They're trying to figure out, okay, how can I get another marker that predicts a treat? And with puppies, all dogs really, we focus on reinforcing behaviors that we like. With puppies, we do not use aversive punishments in training or to try to change behaviors. There's way too much risk of them making the wrong associations, which essentially renders the punishment useless and, more importantly, for my opinion, threatens to mess up our relationship with the puppy and can poison the whole idea of training for a puppy. So we don't like to use aversives. But at this stage, you're going to want to enroll in a sort of next level class, and I'm going to do my best to point you in the right direction on that and come up with some options. And you may also consider having a trainer come to your home because, context is everything to dogs and they're not very good at generalizing. So there are things that are happening in the context of your home that are going to be better addressed in your home. But keep in mind, a puppy's cognitive ability and their attention span have limitations, right? You're going to be working on training, well, depending on your goals, you're going to be working on training for the next couple of years because they just can't learn everything they need to learn, right up front. And at this stage, if your puppy has formed some negative emotional responses to particular things or particular category of stimuli like new people or things with wheels or unexpected sounds, you'll want to look at the socialization checklist in your binders to kind of see all the types of stimuli that you may want to think about exposing your puppy to. But if you are seeing some fearful responses, you consult the socialization handouts on sort of the do's and don'ts of socialization and how to handle the situation when your puppy, might be showing some fear, or you may decide that you want to work, at least have one session with a trainer that can give you a little bit more insight and can show you specifically how to handle those situations. But when we're able to help them when they're this young, we really can affect great change in their emotional responses. It's just that they have to learn about it in a different way. And because, we're still in those, in not the critical sensitive period, but puppy is still learning a lot about the world around him. You're going to want to avoid situations where puppy's senses can get overloaded and then he's in a situation that could potentially really scare him in these early stages of development. Okay, let's talk about problem solving. This problem solving model will be in your binder and we will be talking about it during class in the context of solving puppy problems. And this model is something that you can use going forward for any behavior problem throughout your dog's life, not just during puppyhood. So we want to just train our brains to kind of think this way. So A plus B equals C. And if you are in human behavior, if you work with special needs kids or anything like that, you will recognize this as just applied behavior analysis, really. So the A stands for antecedent, and this just means what happened before the behavior. What conditions existed in the environment, what triggered the dog, maybe it was a cue, like a cue like sit or down, right? That's an antecedent. It could be a distraction, or it can be some kind of internal motivation that we don't, we can't read their minds, so we don't know. But we can, when you go through using this model, we do get a lot of insight on potential internal motivators, and so we can adapt to how we're training or things like that. So the antecedent is just before, right? What happened immediately before the behavior. And B stands for behavior. And this is something that the dog does, right? Something that we can describe, like the dog lifted its left foot or peed in the living room or jumped on my mom. Behavior is not what we think the dog might be thinking. We can't, so if I ask a question, all right, well, what's the behavior problem? It's not helpful if the question is answered, well, the dog was disrespectful or the dog's really rude. We might say instead that the dog ignored me when I called him, or the dog jumped on me when I walked into the room. So those are the types of get used to start thinking of identifying behaviors that way, because you'll get to the core of what's going on much, much more quickly. So B just stands for behavior. C stands for consequence. What happened to the dog immediately after the behavior? And this is the dog's perception of the consequence of the behavior, right? So we can't really guess what they might be thinking, but from their perspective, what is the consequence? And we're going to look at some examples here in a second. And just a reminder that behaviors that are reinforced are more likely to happen again. That's how behavior works. So let's take a look at this chart. You're going to have a blank one of these in your binder just so you can, fill it out for your own puppy stuff. And so let's look at the antecedent column. What happens immediately before? Well, we'll take the first one, for example. So someone gives a dog a cue for sit. Then the dog sits. That's the behavior. Then the consequence of that is the dog gets a treat. So we've now just reinforced the dog sitting, right? Here's another one. On the next line, there's a shoe that's left on the floor. Then the dog chews the shoe. And what's the consequence of that from the dog's perspective? We know what it is from our perspective. Okay, we don't like that at all. But from the dog's perspective, they're rewarded, right? Because dogs, he just learned that shoes are super fun to chew. So that's where we go back to, if we're trying to solve shoe chewing with our puppies, we go back to the antecedents and say, okay, well, we've got to change that, right? How we change the antecedent is how we affect behavior. So we would obviously, and you'll be hearing this, it's a management concept, right? Anything you don't want chewed, it's got to get out of the puppy's way. Kids, toys, shoes, whatever. And so let's look at a couple other ones. Oh, this is one people always find kind of interesting because it's a common complaint too. So on the next one, it's about dogs barking and barking like at delivery people, for example. So a delivery person approaches the door to drop off the package, and the dog is observing this through the window. Well, the dog, especially if you have a Chihuahua, the dog barks and barks and barks. And then what happens? From the dog's perspective? Well, the delivery person leaves. I mean, that really does happen. But the dog is rewarded because what he thinks or learned is his barking chased away the intruder. So again, if we say, okay, I don't want my dog barking and barking and barking, first we always look at what are the antecedent arrangements? What do we have going on there? Well, we might have to, not allow the dog to sit on the back of the window and stare out the window all day if we don't want it barking at people, right? So this chart is just a quick kind of an easy example of what sort of how we'll be approaching solving behavior problems. Oh, let me point out the one about peeing. So say puppies left unsupervised, and puppies are going to have housebreaking accidents. They're just going to. That is because we mess up in the management side, but we're human, and that stuff happens. But we don't want to get used to them making a lot of mistakes, right? Because that's when your trainer's going to say, hey, we might be doing this wrong. So let's say puppy's left unsupervised outside of the pen. Puppy pees on the rug. Now, we walk in, we see the pee, really makes us mad. And this is so old school, but we grab the puppy and bad puppy, and we rub his nose in it thinking, don't pee in here. So what the puppy learned, what we wanted the puppy to learn was we want puppy to learn, no, pee outside, don't pee inside. What puppy learned was the presence of pee, which he did whenever ago. I mean, it's not like you walked in and caught him, right? This is the scenario as the owner walks in, sees the pee that's already left there, who knows when. But what puppy learns is that the presence of pee, plus you, the owner, equals scary. And this is a big light bulb for a lot of people, because where we see fallout here, if we punish potty accidents like that, what we see in a lot of fallout is maybe the dog then becomes frightened. These are all the wrong associations the dog is making. That dog might be hesitant to potty even outside if this person is present. So we really, really have to be careful about how we're dealing with some of these problems. So anyway, A plus B equals C, and we will be talking about that quite a bit. Okay, so if you do have time before you start class to get a couple of sessions of marker training in before class, great. If not, don't even stress about it. We're going to be doing a lot in class, but if you do have time, you may want to try a couple of these sessions with your puppy. I'm going to talk about marker training here, but I've also got a video on my YouTube channel if you're more of a visual learner and you want to take a look at that. Just head on over to YouTube and type Ann King Dog Trainer in the search box. That's Ann with no E. And you'll see me and my bulldog pop up. And when you get to my channel, you'll see playlists. Go ahead and click on the PuppySMART playlist and you'll see the video marker training. So you can take a look at that. So the next couple of slides will just sort of talk through the steps on marker training. So what is a marker? So a marker is a word or a sound or a noise like a clicker. That's what that yellow thing is, or a hand signal that's used to tell your puppy the exact moment they did something that earns them a reward. So remember we said that when we're learning by consequence that we have to have that consequence happen within like half a second for a dog to be able to connect the thing it just did to the thing that we're rewarding them for, right? So the marker has to be really concise, like a word. And in dog training, we use yes, or nice, or good. Those are kind of the typical ones that we use in dog training. I do have a colleague that says, yep, and I really like that one too. So it's got to be a short and concise word. And I'm going to just keep saying this over and over again, so it's not confusing. The marker marks a behavior we like and tells the puppy they're about to get a reward. Okay, so let me give you an example. So say your dog knows how to sit on cue. So you say sit, and the instant the dog's butt touches the ground, you mark, and then you reward. So it would sound like this. And not a visual medium right now. I get it. You can't see it, but you can imagine. So you say sit, yes, and you pay the dog. The yes I said was the moment that the dog's butt touched the ground, right? So therefore the dog learned, oh, what I'm getting rewarded for is when my butt touches the ground. And so once they have learned, once we've been able to mark lots of behaviors that we like, they start to understand, oh, that magical word, right? The marker, that word in and of itself has a reward. It has an impact on the reward system of the brain. So we like to use markers, and this isn't just Ann King talking about something that I do. Any dog trainer uses markers. Any kind of dog training you're going to do, you're going to need to use markers. So you're going to learn yours. Your puppy's going to learn quickly, and you're going to learn very quickly how to do it. Now, markers are not to be confused with praise, such as, oh, good girl or good boy. That's praise, but that's too long to be a marker. So remember, we have to have these short, concise word, and then is very quickly in the training process while we're teaching them what the marker means, quickly followed by the treat. So we'll be working on that in class. And like I said, if you head over and watch I think it's a 3-minute video on YouTube, you can check it out. So we don't want to confuse a marker with praise. And it's also not to be confused with a cue, like sit or come, right? Because a cue is a signal that tells your puppy what behavior to do in order to earn the marker, right? And then, of course, the marker, the puppy knows, oh, that means I'm going to get, my piece of chicken or whatever. So these are the steps that are spelled out, right? So you may want to, I'll talk through these very quickly, but then you may want to screen grab this at the end just so you can have the written out steps if you're going to not go watch the video. So you're going to pick your marker word first, right? And if you do want to use a clicker, you can also combine a verbal marker with a clicker. But if you don't have any experience with this, just don't mess with the clicker right now. I'll probably be using one in class just because I love it, and I'll demo it there and you can decide at the time. So pick your word, whatever it's going to be. and you're going to practice saying this before you even get around to your puppy. Practice saying the word in a very quick and concise way, right? It would be yes versus yes, right? Remember, we're looking for quick and concise. So go ahead and get some treats. Put 5 to 10 small treats in your hand. And when I talk about training sessions, just for future reference, when I say do a couple of sessions with your dog, I mean a couple of 5 to 10 treat sessions, right? So I'm not talking a half-hour session. I'm talking, however long it takes you to burn through 5 or 10 treats. And when we're doing this, it'll take you about, 30 to 60 seconds to burn through 5 to 10 treats because we move pretty quickly. So you get the small treats in your hand, and remember, these are like pea-sized treats. And I like to use soft treats because they're quicker. The puppy can chew them more quickly, and we can keep moving and get more reps in. The more reps that we can get in, the quicker the puppy is going to learn. So put these treats in your hand, and go sit near your puppy or be near your puppy, and hide your handful of treats behind your back so that your puppy isn't sniffing at your hand. We don't want them to get confused about what we're doing. So when puppy is oriented toward you, they don't have to be doing anything. I mean, I don't want you doing on this if they're like gnawing on your foot or whatever. But when the puppy, and once puppy realizes that you've got treats, they're going to orient toward you, right? So once your puppy orients to you, all you have to do is say, yes, and then give your puppy a treat or whatever your marker word is, right? It could be good. And then you're taking a treat out of your hand and giving it to your puppy. So what we're doing is we're basically creating a positive association, because remember, they learn by association. They are learning that your marker word predicts a treat. So, and remember, the puppy does not have to be doing any particular behavior at this point. All we're trying to do is create that positive association. And very important, because sometimes this is confusing, the marker comes before the treat, right? Not simultaneously. So we don't hand the dog the treat as we're saying the word. It's two very distinct operations. We say, yes, then we reach into our palm of treats and we hand the dog a treat. So it goes, yes, then treat. Not simultaneously. So you repeat this 5 to 10 times in a row and just give your puppy time to chew in between. But if you have really good food, which you should, whenever we're teaching anything new, you want to use the best food, what your puppy finds the best. You should be able to do this very quickly 5 to 10 times in a row. And you can alternate delivering treats from your hand with also kind of tossing them for the puppy to get. So you might say, yes, and then toss the treat, just a foot away or something. Don't throw it too far. We want to keep them kind of in this little training circle that we have going. And so you can, like I said, alternate from your hand to the floor. All we want them to know is that magic word means something really fabulous to them. And if you can try to fit in 3 to 4 sessions before you come to class, that'd be awesome. But if you cannot, like I said, don't even worry about it. So head on over if you want to see me doing this in real time, but not with puppies. Just heads up, they're my old dogs. But anyway, you could still get the point. So what does a typical class agenda look like? Make sure that you kind of have in mind what's going to be happening. So when you come to class, regardless of when you start or what module it is, we run the class, each class sort of in the same way with the same structure. Puppies have a really short attention span and we need to keep things moving, which does allow us to practice transitions. And transitions are really important for puppies. It's important that they learn how to kind of regulate their emotions in transitioning from a higher energy activity like play to maybe a lower energy activity like resting on a mat. And we want to keep everything positive, which is why we ask that you bring some things for your puppy to chew on while we're practicing sort of these settle periods. And to signal that we're moving on to the next activity in class, we'll be ringing a bell, which ultimately is going to become a cue to both you and puppy that we're going to be shifting gears. So I'll talk to you in a few minutes about specifically what to do when you arrive at class. But once you're there and class has started, we're going to give you a couple minutes to warm up your puppy, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Then we will be moving to a structure segment where we're going to be using food to make positive associations with all parts of your puppy's bodies being touched and handled. We're going to expose them to the tools that they might see at the vet or the groomer. And the goal here is to train your puppy to expect the unexpected. So, for example, they might feel a little light pressure on their side, followed by a light poke on the shoulder, then maybe a light pinch in between the shoulder blades. So, and all of this time, they're getting treats or they're licking from a licky mat. And so all this stuff is happening, but as long as puppy is, happily taking treats or still licking on their licky mat, it's fine from the puppy's perspective. And many of my clients are referred by veterinarians, and handling sensitivities are very common in dogs that just weren't exposed to handling in a positive and very systematic way. And a lot of times these dogs have to be medicated before they go to the vet, which isn't it's not the end of the world, but wouldn't it be better if puppy could learn just like, okay, well, this is just a regular experience, just a regular day, and I'm going to be getting some treats and no big deal. Because most of the time they're not doing things that are really having to hurt puppy. Most of the time the fear comes from a fear of the unknown. They just don't know what to expect. Then we'll be moving into our activity segment, which is, in my opinion, kind of the funnest part. Everybody will pick up their mats and their water bowls, and they'll let puppy off the leash, and then we're going to let puppies explore and play. And I'll talk in a minute about play and how we need to handle play groups. But in the play area, we're going to have a variety of sensory stimuli, like obstacles to climb on and tunnels and different surfaces to explore. And we'll have sounds playing in the background like thunder and fireworks. The instructors, we might be wearing all different kinds of things or carrying things or pushing vacuums around and things like that. All of the stuff the wacky things that we need to expose our puppies to. A big important category of sensory is the silhouette, the human silhouette. It's very common for dogs that have not had this kind of early puppyhood exposure to react fearfully to humans with silhouettes that look different. So that could be anything from carrying a backpack or wearing a hat, and again, it's not about the specific item. It's about puppy learning that different doesn't necessarily predict danger. So it allows them to practice this emotional flexibility, giving them time to stop and look and process what they're seeing. And each module will focus on sort of a different category of stimuli that we'll be exposing puppies to. So you're going to see a lot of stuff on the ground and hear a lot of weird sounds, and you'll see little scent tins that I'm going to be laying in the play area. This is just to give you ideas of things you can be doing at home. Although you want to introduce sensory and enrichment items, one or two at a time, so that puppy can kind of learn, what it's all about and can take the time to explore. Then we're going to transition into about a 10-minute segment of training. In these segments, we'll introduce how to teach a new behavior that you're going to want to work on at home. At this age group, this segment is really designed to reinforce to you the concept of markers and positive reinforcement training, which is going to equip you to move on to more structured training later after that 14 weeks. It's also designed to introduce the concept of positive reinforcement training to your puppy, and once again, instilling that love of learning. Then we move on to sort of a management or red flag section, right? Here we spend a few minutes. This is where puppy is settling on a mat, kind of chewing on a bone or working on a stuffed Kong while we're talking about some problem solving or some puppy problem, right? Like housebreaking or biting and mouthing, things like that. Or we also do exercises to prevent red flag behaviors. And during this settle period, you'll have the chance to ask questions about the topic of the day and, time permitting, hopefully other things that you might be dealing with outside of class. Then we have another activity session where puppies are off leash and they are playing. And reminder on these days, on days of where you're bringing puppy to class, you're going to want to keep it chill after class. Let your puppy get some really good restorative sleep after you do these sorts of activities with your puppy. I mean, the rule of thumb is at this age about 2 to 3 hours of naps for every 1 hour of experiences, because sleep, especially restorative sleep, just like with humans, gives puppies' brains a chance to kind of sort out all of these experiences and everything that they learned that day. Okay, what to wear, both for you and your puppy. Don't overthink gear yet, because your puppy's growing. You don't really know necessarily, or you may have an idea, but you don't torture yourself about, oh my gosh, what kind of harness, what kind of, we can answer a lot of those questions. And in the binder, we have ideas for you. But when you're coming to class, you're going to want your puppy on a standard leash. And just be mindful, because if you do have other adult dogs in the house, an adult dog's leash is going to have a much bigger and heavier clip on it. So get a leash that is suitable with a lighter clip for your puppy. You're going to want to have a properly fitted harness or flat collar. By properly fitted, that means that your puppy can't slip out of it. Very, very common for people not to realize that the collar is not fitted properly until their puppy decides, and tries to and can back out of that collar. So you want to make sure that's properly fitted. We don't recommend slip leads for puppies this age. Slip lead is the one that you just kind of slip over their head and then it sort of slides based on how much pressure you put on it. We don't like them for puppies. Number one, you have to keep in mind a leash is really a management tool. It's not a training tool. And what we don't want to do is be introducing the concept of a lot of neck pressure on puppies for their health, but also because it really doesn't facilitate any kind of learning. And if they're pulling against a slip lead, we end up just reinforcing a lot of pulling. So I don't like slip leads for puppies this age. But if your puppy has not been desensitized to wearing a harness and you've tried to put one on and puppy just is not down with that, don't worry about it. We can help you out with that in class. Just make sure you have a properly fitted flat collar. Now for you, you're going to want some closed-toed shoes, just because puppies have sharp teeth and a lot of them like to chase feet. And also you will be asked to step into a disinfectant tray on your way in just to disinfect the bottoms of your shoes. You're going to want to wear comfortable clothing that allows you to bend and stoop and work with your puppy. And you're also going to want to make sure not to wear clothing that has been worn in an area that's been heavily trafficked by dogs that you just don't know their status, right? They could be sick or unvaccinated or, so places like dog parks, the hospital, or the vet's office, groomer. Make sure you just change your clothes before you come to class. All right, so when you get to class, try to arrive about 5 minutes before class time. This gives you and your puppy a chance to kind of get ready to start, because we do hit the ground running right at start time. But before you even get your puppy out of the car, you're going to want to wear your treat bag. Make sure you have that available on your body and stuffed with treats. You're going to want to have your puppy on the leash or on the harness or collar. Even if you're carrying puppy in, make sure you get all that gear on before you walk in the door. When you walk in the door, we will have a potty spot next to, typically it's before you enter the training area. Depending on the weather. If it's raining outside, we put the potty spot inside. It's just a piece of AstroTurf. But you may want to walk your puppy to the potty spot first before class starts to see if they need to go potty there. And then you'll step into that disinfectant tray before you enter the class area, and you will keep your puppy on the leash, and then you'll walk over to your chair. We try to have a couple chairs for each puppy person for each group, just because we know you have a lot of stuff and we need to keep all that stuff up off the floor. And so once you get to your chair, go ahead and just start to get your puppy warmed up. We just catch them doing right, which basically just means do about 5 reps where you can mark any reward and reward any behavior that the puppy's doing that you like. So this could be that they have 4 feet on the floor versus jumping. This could be they just walk onto their mat, or a puppy looks at you, either offers eye contact or responds when you say their name. Maybe puppies just sitting there nicely and watching other puppies walk in without barking or pulling at the end of the leash. Those are all behaviors that in the moment you should say yes or good or whatever your marker is, and reward puppy. So we just want to get them warmed up, before class is started. So let's talk about playgroups, because this is, when it's happening on the ground, there's not a lot of time for instruction, right? Because it's very organic, it's happening in the moment, so we have to kind of know what is going on. So what is good play? First of all, there are videos on the PuppySMART playlist that you can look at, so that you can kind of see body language. There's one in particular about puppies that might be playing too rough, which is interesting. So you can go take a look at that. But what is healthy play? Well, play is essentially ritualized aggression, and all mammals do it, which just means they're practicing. So it's during play that puppies practice all sorts of predatory behaviors. But the difference is they're using body language that says, I'm just playing, right? So, and they're hardwired to do this. If a puppy isn't playing, it's concerned about something else, or it's distracted, or it's busy, which is fine too. But playing, they're hardwired to play. And what does healthy play look like? Well, we like to see playful body language. Again, body language that says, don't take me seriously, I'm just playing, right? So those are play bows. Puppy might offer a toy to another puppy, might try to entice a puppy to chase him, things like that. We want to see reciprocal play, or kind of role reversals, where puppies are taking turns chasing. They're taking turns, being the one that's mouthing the other one, or being on top of the other one. We want to see a lot of back and forth, taking turns. We want to see puppies that are exerting self-control, right? They're not using full strength bites when they're mouthing. Their body language is kind of more bouncy and jumpy versus like full speed and direct. We want to be looking at their faces. Or do they have a happy and relaxed face, or are they really staring intently and their pupils are dilated? That would be a dog that's sort of climbing that arousal ladder. We don't really like that in play. And play periods are really short. Normal play can be 20 to 60 seconds of active play. Then most puppies are going to want to take a break. They get some water, they might check something else out, and then return to play. So a lot of times if we let play go on too long, puppies just get more and more and more aroused. And then they just learn this really high arousal level of play, which if they take that to the wrong puppy, who has a different play style, that's probably not going to be a good match. So we're also looking for puppies that are not showing fearful body language, or they're not completely retreating, right? So puppies and you'll see it on the play floor. They might be momentarily, especially when they're meeting new dogs, right? Or new puppies. They might be momentarily, concerned, like, wait, what's this guy's deal? But what we want to see is we want to see them regroup kind of quickly. Now, that said, there are lots of puppies who come into class for the first time and they never get out from underneath the chair, which is totally fine. We want them to be able to, here's that idea of that sense of control, right? We want to give them that control. If you don't want to play and you just want to watch, that's fine too. We can't force a puppy to play, and we certainly don't want to lure them into a situation that they might not be ready for. So if they want to hide, let them do that. And with play, three's a crowd. 2 dogs play together. If there's a third dog, they're usually trying to manage the situation or insert themselves where they might not be welcome. So we might have to intervene on a dog's behalf in that situation. So how do we know if play is too rough? Well, if it turns one-sided, right, meaning, okay, now we see one dog is doing all the chasing, we want to use a positive interrupter. And by that, it can just mean us saying, puppy, 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 in a high voice, or squeaking a toy. We want something to distract the dogs. and so that then we can move them apart if that's what is needed at that time. Now, if a positive interrupter is not working and we're definitely seeing that a puppy is too aroused, you're going to need to go to the puppy and then offer treats while you're leashing that puppy, right? You're going to have, and I'll get to what our role in the play group is, but you will have your leashes with you while we walk around on the floor. And if you're in doubt about play is getting too rough, one way to kind of test that, you might restrain the more exuberant puppy, and then let's watch the reaction of the puppy that's more timid. Does that timid puppy run off and completely, disengage from that situation? Or does that timid puppy keep trying to engage? And really what he's trying to do is say, hey, buddy, I want to play with you, but let's take it a little bit slower, or don't be so rough, or whatever. Puppies have to learn each other's play styles before they decide, oh, great, you're just my type of friend. And it takes them time to get used to, other dogs. So in class, you'll find them building relationships with other puppies that they'll get more and more comfortable over time. But if it does turn out that your puppy is too aroused, we're going to need to take a break. So we'll be using our treats to leash puppy up. We might go on a short walk. And the instructor is going to be guiding you on this, but you'll want to take a short walk outside of the play area until your puppy can focus on you for a few marks and treats for behaviors, right? We don't want, the quote timeout doesn't really work if the puppy's straining to go back into the play group. We need to kind of shift puppy's focus for a few, and it could only be 30 seconds. We won't know till we're there on the ground what the puppy needs. But we want to shift them into a little bit different mode for a second, get their attention back on us. That's those transitional skills. And then the instructor may have you put a drag line on your puppy when re-entering the group. So if you have a particularly exuberant puppy that we're having to interrupt a lot, sometimes and a drag line is just a really light leash. I get them at the dollar store, and I have them in class, that we can just have the puppy drag. So it's like a little handle that we can, if we need to pick that up to redirect. But if our puppy is on a leash, we don't want to just stand there in the puppy group and let the puppy get frustrated at the end of the leash. If your puppy is leashed, you're walking that puppy outside of the play area, and we will be able to talk you through that on the ground. Okay, so more about play groups. What is your role in the play group? Well, the play groups are socialization for puppies. I know it's hard for some of us not to socialize with other people, but you really do want to focus on puppies while the instructor's kind of narrating body language and all of that. Like I said, it's all very organic and happening in the moment, but you learn a lot while you're keeping your eyes on the puppies. So you're going to want to keep your leash with you, and you're going to stick close to your puppy so that you can step in if necessary. It's all happening very, very quickly, and you don't want to be across the room talking to somebody while your puppy is getting himself into a little bit of a situation on the other side of the room. But we take a hands-off approach while we're kind of following our puppies around, letting them explore, until we need to do otherwise. You'll notice every module has a different sensory theme. And so observe your puppy while they're on the floor investigating all of those things so that you can, make a mental note like, oh, puppy seemed kind of afraid of walking over that weird surface. So you'll want to be kind of working on those sorts of things outside of class. You'll see some enrichment items around on the floor, like snuffle mats, or I have like snuffle trays, things that just different things that puppies can stick their nose into to fish out a little piece of treat or something like that, if it's safe to do so. Meaning we don't want to create conflict over food on the play floor, so we need to be judicious about that. But you can slip in if your puppy's exploring my little tray of empty water bottles, you can drop a little treat in there so that puppy has to stick their face in there and root around for it. That's no problem. We want to reinforce our puppies for checking in with us, right? We want them to realize that when they check in with us, that doesn't always mean that the fun time is going to end. So if your puppy responds to their name while they're playing, or comes to check in with you, reward that, with a treat, and then let them continue playing. The other thing we like to do in play groups are practice calmly grabbing puppy's collar. It's called gotcha, and it's one of the exercises that we work on. It's also in your binder. Basically, we want to be able to turn gotcha into just, it doesn't mean, like I said, that the play is ending, that it just means that I'm going to hold on to your collar for a second, and then you're going to get to go back out and play. Sometimes gotcha means we've got to put the leash on and leave. So puppy just learns that, okay, gotcha, doesn't always predict that we've got to leave, because that's when you get the puppy that will run away from you when it gets a sense that, oh no, the fun time's going to end. The other thing that you can do that's really helpful for other people's puppies is help puppies learn that jumping is not a very rewarding behavior. All you have to do is just turn your back on a puppy. They're really cute and it's super hard, but when they come up and jump up to meet you, and if we attend to that, if we bend over, oh my gosh, so cute, basically we're reinforcing jumping. So let's help others by not reinforcing jumping in their puppies. And then potty accidents, I have a little cleaning station with all of the stuff that you need to clean up potty. I mean, it takes a village, honestly, with the whole potty accident thing. But if it's safe to take your eyes off your puppy, you can, get the stuff from the cleaning station and clean that up. If not, that's one of the things that the instructors can help with. The other thing you're going to want to do is check out the Play Styles handout in the activity section of your binder, and also watch those related videos on YouTube, so you can start getting a sense of what what good play looks like. All right. Well, what are the instructors? What's our role in the play groups? Our job is to educate you about what's going on, obviously, but we're really just referees, right? So we really have to kind of keep our focus on the group. So it's not a good time to answer off-topic questions from students, because it's just, you can get me talking about anything, dogs, and then there I am all distracted and everything. So we can talk offline about your specific stuff. But another one of our roles is to divide the play area into sections if necessary. So if we've got small dogs in with bigs, we may want to separate them. It's all, again, happening in real time, so we really don't know till we're there. And it could be different with the same group of dogs each time. We also want to, ultimately our goal is we want to set up the environment so that puppies you have a really positive play experience. So we will be narrating body language, like I talked about, what to look for, what puppies are trying to tell each other. Our job also is to offer guidance for over-aroused puppies. So we'll be able to help you learn or decide, okay, my puppy's, maybe needs a break for a minute. And then, of course, we will be there to assist in the potty accident cleanup if necessary. What to bring to class? You're going to bring a mat. I like a nice comfy bath mat. You're going to want to buy 2 and keep 1 in your car for socialization outings. Your puppy's going to we're going to develop a real positive emotional response to these mats, right? Because it's going to be kind of their go-to place. So you'll want to get a couple of those. You're going to want to bring something for puppy to chew on. I like stuffed Kongs. Those are those red things there. There's a million resources on the internet about how to make those. There'll also be something in your binder. Pork chomps is one that I like. It's like roasted pig skin, so it's not like rawhide. We don't like rawhide anymore, because there's all kind of reasons we don't like rawhide. But yeah, I love the pork chomps, and those are real easy to get. Bully sticks are great. I don't have a picture of them up here, but I like bully sticks too. You're You're going to want to bring a water bowl from home and water from home, actually. Dogs have a taste bud for water, and with puppies, especially more sensitive puppies, they don't always like other water. So we want them to be super comfortable. So just bring you're going to have like a diaper bag, honestly. It's for your puppy. Just put some water in there and bring a little portable water bowl, because we don't want to share at this age because of, vaccine status and stuff. Not that much happens, but we're just trying to be cautious. Okay, you're going to need to bring treats. Now, the treat scenario, we typically have about 3 different levels of treats when we're training. We have lower value, like, and I don't even have a picture of a lower value one on here. We have lower value like Charlie Bears, or I don't know if you're familiar with those, but dry, crunchy treats or dry dog food. Those are lower value. They tend to be lower value because they don't have as much smell. Right. And so that's sort of the low value stuff. Medium value, I've got up here the picture of it's a dehydrated chicken. It's called Train by a company called Pupford. Those are freeze dried little training treats. Those are real good, and they're appropriately sized too. They're real tiny. And then I've got like the Ziwi, the jerky. Dogs really, really like that. Then we've got, the Lucy roll. Now, soft treats usually have the highest value because they're the smelliest. That Lucy roll, which I get them on Amazon, that's like a dog trainer favorite. You just cut that up into tiny pea-sized pieces, and put them in your freezer. Then pull it out when you need to. That's my that's my favorite from a high value perspective. Sometimes we use like string cheese cut into really tiny pieces, but with puppies, puppies' digestive systems are still developing, so we don't want to overload them with a bunch of rich food. So but you're going to want to bring the treats that your puppy loves the most. You want to have those at class. We want class to be like, yes, I am so excited to be here. I have fun. I get the really good treats. And then you'll use your high value treats at home as well. But we want to make sure that you are bringing the good stuff to class. You can also just chop up boiled chicken into tiny pieces or some other lean meat. Again, we don't want anything too rich, but lean meats, puppies can tolerate that typically pretty well unless they have, allergies, which you probably wouldn't even know at this stage. And then you're going to want to bring a hungry but not starving puppy. So classes are in the morning. We have them, they're late morning, early afternoon. We do that on purpose. I don't do puppy classes at night. Puppies at night are it's not good for them. They're too tired. And they tend to act crazy, which you all are experiencing at home probably, that bewitching hour, which we'll talk about. But so you want to feed puppy a little bit, before class, like a few hours before class. We also want to avoid puppies that get car sick. They're still learning how to deal with all that motion. If you can, I like traveling with puppies in a crate in the car. So hopefully you've got your crate. If not, you'll be hearing a lot about that from us in class. And just heads up, you want to carry a few towels in the car just in case puppy gets car sick even after class. So that is the list of what to bring. You also should have had this in your confirmation information. So it's all written out for you in there as well. So what should you be doing outside of class? Because this class isn't enough, right? The class is designed to show you what you should be doing. And in these early stages, you're doing stuff every day to help your puppy's emotional development. And like everything, you and your puppy are going to get out of this what you end up putting into it. But you're going to want to continue your socialization outings. And again, consult those materials in the binder. It's all there for you. You're going to be wanting to work on preventing red flag behaviors. The two biggies that we work on at this age are preventing resource guarding and preventing separation anxiety. You're going to want to set up play dates. Either, use the Facebook page, the class Facebook page to communicate with people, or Nextdoor or Facebook, or however you can. I know it's hard unless you're a really extroverted person. A lot of us don't really want to get out there and have to socialize with people, but I will say it's super, super important at this stage for your puppy. So please try to arrange play dates with puppies. And if your friends have really friendly adult dogs can be very useful in teaching puppies things that as humans we are just not able to teach them. So find those friends. You're going to want to practice training. And when I say training, I'm talking about a couple 5 to 10 treat sessions a day, right? Where you're not talking about minutes and minutes and hours of training. You really want to focus more on the exposure between 9 and 14 weeks. But we are doing some training, and you really want to focus on building a generous reward history with your puppy. And all I mean by that is that your puppy starts to look at you as somebody that kind of always is reinforcing or rewarding something that puppy is doing. And your puppy, might not know any behaviors, right? If we haven't trained specific behaviors like sit, down, or all of that, they do lots of things during just existing during the day that we like. Again, walking onto the mat, making eye contact with us, greeting us with a sit instead of jumping, catching them before they jump on us for attention. Mark that and reward that, so that we don't have to have trained behaviors. There's plenty of opportunities during the day to reward our puppies, for doing things we like. And also keep in mind, and this is in your binder, this idea of they have to do something to get something. So for example, if it's time to feed puppy and puppy is jumping all around because they're so excited, all you have to do is wait until puppy's 4 feet are on the floor. And, and if that's all they can offer you at that moment, take it, mark yes, and then set down the bowl. So rewarding is not always in the scenario of training. It's basically, there's a bunch of life rewards, right? You put their bowl down, or you open that. If they want to go outside, you might have, and if they're jumping, or, you might have them at least wait till they get 4 on the floor, and then you say yes and open the door, right? So there's all kinds of life rewards too, and all that's in your binder. You're going to be wanting to use your mat. You're going to hear me talk a lot about the mat. Use your mat at home. So puppies should get excited when you pull out that mat, because ideally we've had good things happen on that mat. They've gotten treats. That's where they get their chew bones, things like that. But put away your mat if you're not able to reward puppies at that time. We don't want the mat to just sit around and lose value. Because what we want is when we pull out that mat, puppy goes, oh, okay, good. I know something good's going to be happening here. And what you're doing actually is you're starting to build a foundation for a go to place behavior that you'll be doing in more of your, in later training. You should also be, outside of class, consulting the PuppySMART playlist on YouTube. Join our Facebook group. There's a QR code in your binder that you can scan, and we'll let you in that group. And there's so much info in that binder. So really, use that information to kind of supplement what you're learning in class. And you may decide that you want to consult with a trainer to come to your house. Dogs are very contextual, and they're not very good at generalizing, like we talked about, I think, earlier. And so there are some things that just have to be dealt with in your home. And, private training or working with someone privately is very different than what can happen in a group class. So I actually have, I usually tell my clients, have at least one visit with a trainer in your house so that you can make sure that you're setting up the environment and all of that kind of thing for, the puppy's success. And you also want to start thinking about next levels. If you like group classes, which I do for a variety of reasons, and again, different from private training, I'll do my best. I'm going to be pulling together some resources for private group training from other instructors that I know. So I will do my best to get that information to all y'all, but be thinking about that. So just some health reminders. My veterinary friends asked me to keep reminding everybody, even though today's vaccines do provide better protection than those of our past, keep in mind your puppy is not fully vaccinated or fully protected until they are fully vaccinated. So you're just going to want to use common sense on your outings. Avoid public areas where stray or unvaccinated dogs may have been. You should know the health and vaccine status of the dogs that your puppy's going to be hanging out with. We don't want puppies to be, investigating random poop on the ground or random dogs' butts, because a lot of, parasites and things can be passed through, and viruses can be passed through feces. If you're ever unsure, you just, you're either carrying your puppy or put him in a stroller or a wagon, and they can still observe from being up. But that's another thing you can do with your mats is if you want to go have coffee with a friend, you can take your mat and use it, put it on the ground, and hopefully puppy's learning, okay, this is where I'm supposed to lay. But you want to avoid, grassy areas. We really like concrete, just again, because dog poop on the ground can have stuff in it that we want to avoid. So, and just remember too, that you're going to want to do outings in between classes to take full advantage of the socialization window. I know I've said that 20 times by now, but that's because it's that important. So let's just talk about real quick, we're wrapping it up here, some general logistic stuff about the facility. So the Competition Canine is the name of the facility. It's located on Green Valley Road in Placerville. It's a bit of a wonky building, so you'll have to, once you find us, you'll find us, you'll know where to go, but we're sort of in the back. And we do try to have signage out front that points you in the right direction. We'll have a puppy potty area, like I talked about, where it's clearly marked, but you have to come into the building first. If you do need to skip a class, if you can, give me a heads up at the email, at the PuppySMART email address, if you can't make it, just so we will know not to be looking for you. And then we can also sort of figure out, maybe get you into a makeup session. The program does allow for one skip week. Children, we love having children in class because puppies really need to meet children. Even puppies, even if you don't have any kids in your life, don't plan on it, children exist in the world. And so our puppies really do need to meet them and get socialized with little tiny humans. But you do need to have, I almost said a handler for your child. If your kid is an age that they can't, take direction from adults or occupy themselves, you're going to want to have somebody there to help you with your child because your attention will be on your puppy. And of course, if your puppy is sick, vomiting, diarrhea, lethargic, with any kind of discharge, please don't bring him to class, and do let me know, because as good as we are at sanitizing, as protected as puppies are with vaccines, stuff still happens, not very often, but it can, and we really need to know if you're observing some illness in your puppy. We want to kind of make sure that that's not something that happened in our classroom. And it can just be useful to communicate that with the other students. So that's the email address that you can communicate with me. And that's it on the facilities and logistics. So that is it. Thank you so much for hanging in here with me. I look forward to seeing you and your puppy very soon.